Namaste. Today it's such a pleasure for me to bring a wonderful conversation with our own dear Eshani Shah of the Boston area itself. Eshani ji, of course, is such a community leader. There is no event that happens where Eshani hasn't done something to make it a super success. But primarily, she is along with her husband Chandu, is the co-founder of S4 Inc. Defense contracting business. She also has been extensively involved in Gurjar as its president in various roles. Of course, there is no organization that hasn't seen Ishani's kind involvement and community service. And she was also very instrumental in setting up the Boston Bureau for TV Asia. But most of us remember her very well for bringing fabulous plays. She and Chandu actually have promoted some of the finest Gujarati and Hindi plays in the area and really helped build a theatrical audience in this area. So thank you, Ishani, for taking the time. And most importantly, she is the mother of twins, not an easy thing to manage, who are doing very well. And she also has two twins, I would say, two very important people in her life who are superstars in their own right. And she was born into nobility, and it was wonderful that she came here. Her father is the very renowned playwright Tarak Mehta. Tarak Mehta ka Ulta Chashma is very well known for people, but he is, the winner of the Padma Shri and so many other awards, and such a beloved writer in Gujarati. And I think he helped shape a lot of people's theatrical life itself. And her husband is Chandu Shah, again, a award-winning film writer, producer, a poet, and so on and so forth. Right now, of course, the both of them are living deeply in her eyes, and we will see her eyes, and we will appreciate the love that we all have for them. So, Ishani, I'm first of all so grateful for you to come here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranjani, for making the time to chat with me. I know we meet at different events and kind of have brief conversations. So you always have said that let's do this. So I'm glad we are making it happen today.
Absolutely, Ishani. I mean, you need no introduction to our community, but even I, who knew you pretty well, did not know so much about you. And I'm so glad that I learned a little bit. And I know in the Gujarati community, they probably know more about you, but I would love to learn a little bit about what it was to grow up as, the daughter of Tarak Mehta, because I heard from so many people that when the leading members of the acting world would be performing plays, you were a 2-year-old jumping around in those things. That's what I heard. So I'd love to, for you to share a little bit about your father and, what his work has done to impact the world.
So as you mentioned, primarily, he's a writer, did some acting. So initial years as I was growing up, he was doing a lot of theater as a writer, as a director, as, actor. So growing up, I kind of didn't get much of his time growing up as he was out with rehearsals, this, that. Then later part, I think I must be 10, 11, when he started writing this column for a Gujarati magazine called Chitralekha, and the column was called Duniya Ne Undha Chashma, which means seeing the world with a different vision. Ulta chashma se seedha dekhte ho, you see the world upside down. So it was a kind of a sort of a satirical column. But what it was very similar to Simpsons here or whatever, that it is the same characters. It talks about this sort of a building, in societies. In India, you see A wing, B wing, C wing. There is all these societies and all these neighbors who become family. So in his writings, there was like 2-3 main characters, and then every so often he would add a new character. And these characters, the way he described them, people could actually visualize them. In taking a pause back, in fact, when my father passed away, Narendra Modi had written a letter to us saying, you know what, because your father was a playwright, even in his column, he could actually describe the character so well that you could visualize them. Because which is what a director needs from a writer, to have a actual characterization. So just moving on. And that column was one of the biggest super hits all over the world. The Gujaratis went crazy. There was a time the magazine came out every Thursday, and a lot of Gujaratis will vouch for this, that people in a household would actually fight to read it first. Because, and so whoever got their hand on it first, so it was at that time, there were 2-3 writers.
Yeah.
Mehta was the editor, so he had a column. So my father's writings were a craze. People on Thursday in train, they used to be catching like that handle and still reading. And so there were a lot of stories and people were just crazy. And so that was like right around when 10, 11, that it happened. Then I actually went to a boarding school for a while. You must have read in Manju's book about, happenings, personal happenings. That my father continued to write for this magazine. He was doing less theater and now really focused on it because it was a commitment for every Thursday. So, and then people started inviting him all over the world just to come and give a talk. So he's traveled a lot just based on invitations from Gujaratis all over.
Yeah.
And, that continued till my father kind of got a little sick in 2013-14, where he couldn't. So yeah, I actually wrote for this magazine, personally wrote for it for 43 years.
Wow.
And then there was a ghostwriter who kind of continued with his help because my father couldn't write anymore. So it was almost 47 years of writing before the column closed down after he left.
47.
And then
it's a weekly column?
It was a weekly column. And there are like 84 books that my father published with these writings. And then, of course, part 2 in 2008, Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma was envisioned.
Yeah.
Because nobody knew, that this was. So it was the love, and the producer of the serial knew how much brand name my dad's name was. So that's why it is one of the only serial that actually is with the writer's name.
Yeah, that's a
you don't see a serial that actually, so it's like Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma.
Yeah.
And today the serial has completed 14 years, still running strongly, still having high TRPs. They have completed, I want to say, about 4,400 episodes.
Wow.
And it's still so, in all these years, the name Tarak Mehta really kind of, made a lot of difference for me. It's like, oh, wow, you're Tarak Mehta's daughter. And then we had opportunity to act in a few episodes here and there. And so that also kind of, gave us some fame. So it was just, I think my father's name became a brand name.
Yeah.
And that's why he was the very first Gujarati writer to get a Padma Shri. Of course, Narendra Bhai was the prime minister, and my father, Narendra Bhai has only given one long interview, and that is with my father. Narendra Bhai has never since given an interview. Only man he gave an interview to was my father. So when we celebrated my dad's 80th birthday, it was a huge event, and Narendra Bhai was actually the chief guest then.
My God. Oh
so
my God.
He was, and he was one of those men loved by everybody. I actually published a book with 75 writings from people, how much, it's
They
sort of,
loved him. Wow.
they loved him, what they'd done for him. And I think it is sort of the same thing that my father just helped, never expected anything. He was just one of those, this thing, and I kind of course,
it rubbed up on you.
Yeah, and history repeated itself in Chandu. Yes. As you heard that.
Before I go to Chandu, though, I do want to ask one very quick question is that I know that many people have credited your father with training for acting. Am I right about that? Or
It's not so much training. He never had a training school. But, over the years, a lot of new actors kind of sort of worked for him, trained with him. And, I think what I have inherited from him is that never go and claim your fame. People once people know you, know the kind of work you do, the kind of person you are,
Yeah.
you don't need to be, given the credit or go on stage and raise the hand saying, hey, I did it.
Yeah.
People associate certain successes with you because they have seen you do the work, they have seen you. And that's what I learned from my father. I mean, my father never tooted his horn.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that myself. So that's definitely one inheritance I got from him, that you will get your
What?
credit as and when it's due.
Right.
No need to run after it, and
Did you ever think of a career in acting? I mean, considering
no,
that.
I did actually, I did a bit of acting, but honestly, Ranjani, growing up, both my parents were actors. My mother also was an actress. So the kind of life they lived and the way I grew up,
Yeah.
kind of, sometimes you see certain children getting put off by their parents' careers because it's such a hardworking career.
Yeah.
So although I have it in me, I never pursued it living, and I was in a boarding school, then I started working, so there was really never an full grown opportunity that I grabbed.
Right. You have the love for theater, but not
Correct.
you decided not to pursue it as a career, and that's so. But just give me maybe one incident of what it meant to be his daughter, like anything that comes to mind where suddenly people realized you were his daughter and went, oh my God.
So it was funny thing. So when he started writing in Chitralekha, there is a character called Tapu, which is it was his primary, this young boy. And then the writings also talks about him and his wife, so as a couple in that building society. Never name for the fans for a longest time did not know that Tarak Mehta had a daughter. Till I got married in 1983, where it was all over Chitralekha, Tarak Bhai's daughter getting married and all that. So the initial years, because I studied in a boarding school and, I lived with my mother and all that, I didn't get a lot of exposure to that. My biggest, of course, exposure is being there in Delhi, where he was being given the Padma Shri. That is like, okay, here is a man, who has never, he was the first Gujarati to get this recognition. And, so that was, and then of course, I think when he was around, it was more like, I think after Ulta Chashma, it was a lot more like rickshawalas, like oh, Tarak Mehta's daughter, or literally layman who watched Tarak Mehta, and who, I mean, I've done a few episodes, as I told you. People, even after 12 years of doing those episodes, it's been exactly 12 years, people still recognize me because of reruns and all that. So in that sense, that is like being his daughter, and literally so much love for my father that kind of brushes off on me. People really love to see me say even though I'm here, they stay in touch and all that. So yes, I mean, obviously, and but what is a good part is that, I don't know if you know that, but my children lived with their grandparents, my parents, for the first 5 years. So especially 2 straight years they lived there. So they actually also appreciated who their grandfather was. They were on stage with him when he was given some awards, and like I think he was his 60th birthday. There was a lot of celebrations, and my kids were there. So they also, sometimes kids don't realize their grandparents' legacy. But my children did, because they lived in India, and they got a lot of importance being Tarak Mehta's grandchildren.
Wonderful to hear.
And so my father actually also was a documentary writer initially as his profession. So what, back then, if you remember growing up, before every movie, there used to be a documentary. Government of India, So he wrote the Gujarati documentary shown in Gujarat. Somebody, a Bengali, writing in Bengali, showed in Bengal. So so he works for Films Division. So he basically, this writing was like it's second passion.
No, that's fantastic. So the other then, but of course, then here you thought you won't get into theater and you get married to Chandu. How did
Correct.
that happen? And,
So,
tell me more.
so basically, even Chandu isn't a playwright
Yeah.
to believe it, but I mean, he's not an actor to begin with,
Yeah.
but definitely. So even when I was like, I came back from Panchgini, I was 2021, and in India there was this Yuv Darshan, this that. So Chandu must be in his 20s then also, and he was one of the most popular poet even then at that age. And then he wrote this musical called Khelaya, which was an adaptation of the Fantastics that
Ah,
ran on off of Broadway for 40 years in New York.
right, right.
So Chandu adapted it, but it was more than the adaptation, it almost original, because Chandu wrote all the, I think there are 12 songs in there.
Yeah.
Chandu wrote the script, and it ran for like 400 plus shows at Prithvi primarily. And Chandu,
Wow.
like it was a cult. It was like you could see every time the show was announced, it would fill up. People would beg because it would sell out. Personally, I've seen it 50 times, but I know a lot of people in Mumbai who must have seen 30, 40
Right.
times.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. And that really, established him. He was one of those poets, very different poet. The way he wrote it. I mean, you sometimes like, oh, where is he getting these thoughts from? So he was always a very good poet. He wrote plays, never acted.
Ah.
And then we moved here in 83. Right after we moved, just within a month, there was Gurjar Drama Festival. So Bipin Parekh was the president then. So Bipin Bhai, and then of course we knew Jasmine, because Jasmine worked in theatre with my dad when I was growing up. We knew Inku Rageshri Mehta.
Yeah.
She actually did theatre with my mother. So I knew them from Mumbai, never knew they lived here.
Yeah.
Of course, then I knew about Jasmine. So Bipin Bhai invited us, and so we got a group of few interested theatre people, and we performed a play written by Chandu.
Wow.
That kind of, connected with a lot of Gujarati friends immediately. Sometimes people struggle to make friends.
Yeah.
We received so much love to begin with. I mean, we already had great friends, and, our social life started perhaps, I mean, before we even found a job. So that's why. And then we liked the idea, and then everybody who had been part of that, it's like, let's do more theater, let's do more. So we kind of opened a small theater group. And then from 1984 through 92, we traveled all over the country, because back then it was not, plays didn't come from India.
Yeah.
So we were like a cheaper bet anyway. So we traveled to California, Canada, New York, New Jersey, Chicago, and did a lot of theater, one-act plays, full-length plays.
Right. That's
Of course, I had my twins in 1992, where I took a step back.
that's right.
Then I think and immediately after that, in 94, 95, Chandu sponsored his first play, Paresh Rawal Maharati in Gujarati.
Yeah.
And the rest of the journey, that kind of, so I stepped away, and then Chandu was doing this till about early 90s, but then he wasn't doing it very profitably. You know what I mean? It's Chandu being Chandu, like stage out ticket, not follow up with ticket prices and that. And then I kind of
stepped in and bought some.
I kind of stepped in after my kids were, they were living in India. So this thing. So after 96, after I came back in 98, I was also with them, and then I took over. And then since I've been the primary person doing all this, and he's just, doing the back end work and all that. Yeah. So that's how. But again, he never quit poetry, continued writing. In fact, he wrote 2 more musicals from here. The very other one was Eva Mumbai Ma Chal Jaiye, which was an adaptation of West Side Story, which again, we performed 30 shows all over the country. And that's Feroz Khan, who did Mughal Azam.
Yeah.
Feroz was the hero of his Khelaya. So Chandu and Feroz have been together all these years, and, so it's kind of has been a great journey.
Right. So of
Then
all, yeah, I was going to say, go ahead, finish.
no. Just so basically, primarily we did theater because we were all, but then it was difficult because of his business to find time to rehearse. And then, of course, this became a craze, getting celebrity actors
Yeah.
here. And people just, loved the idea of watching their favorite star performing live.
So do you think he was poetry was more his thing or playwriting is more
Oh,
his?
no, definitely poetry because playwright also, he was one of the kind of a chosen one because he was a poet and a playwright. So
Ah,
when you can write the lyrics of the
yeah,
songs and you write the script and you can make them complement each other.
yeah,
So
right.
that's why anytime somebody wanted to do a musical on Gujarati stage,
That's
he
it.
was the guy to go to. So
Right.
definitely a poet at heart, but he was a good playwright also.
Of course, of course, of course. I remember being part of some of the poetry readings that we used to have under the Vijay Mishra ji and group had
Correct, correct, correct.
and I've heard
I
Chandu
mean,
ji.
as you know, he was the first one through all these years who stood by Vijay Mishra no matter what. They together pioneered going to Harvard every year.
I know, I remember those, but the poetry
Uh,
there was very
Correct.
beautiful, and I remember he was quite a leader, supporting that. So, of all his works, I mean, so one of the ones that always fascinated me was, again, I don't understand Gujarati, so I can't say I appreciated it that, but being an artist, I could see that he was a great writer. This Blue Jeans, can you tell me about that? Because that was very interesting. This was
So,
the title even.
correct. So basically, in 2018 or 19, he published his first book called Ane Thoda Sapna, which
Mm.
was like a lot of depth in those poetry. Somewhere along the way, he kind of, God knows how he got this inspiration that blue jeans, which is what we wear, and
Yes.
our own genes, inner genes, what we
Oh,
inherit, there is some kind of connection in there. Just the word genes.
brilliant. Oh.
It's just, yeah. So it was kind of one of those brilliant ideas that he got. And he went on to write about 50, 60 poems comparing blue jeans to our
Gee.
own genes. Yes.
Wow, wow, I wish I understood Gujarati.
Correct.
Sure, maybe you can translate. I mean, now that we can do that, I know it will lose
Yeah,
its.
somebody I have talked to, I think Poppy
Yeah, yeah,
Charnel
yeah.
has translated a couple of his poetry, but maybe we could look into, doing that and maybe, do some
Hindi will
more.
be great too. That will be so
Correct. So he,
wonderful.
he did adapt a couple of his, I think Poppy did for him, and
Ah,
he has recited them at Hindi Manch, you
yeah.
know,
Okay.
poetry events and all that. But that was like, back in 2000. And then right around 1999, he started S for Ink.
Yeah.
So kind of then after the years after that, I think his focus had changed.
Right.
Although he continued writing, he wasn't writing as much and for whatever. I didn't see that
Yeah, I know.
till obviously when he was no more. I went through all his boxes, all this thing, and I found tons of poetry that was never published.
Oh, it's
So I have, they
not
are
a
all,
word.
yes, I have, they are being done now. A whole, we are reprinting his Ane Thoda Sapna and Blue Jeans. So I'm reprinting those, adding everything he's written in the last 14 years,
Yeah.
14, 15 years since he was last published. And, I hope to kind of get his poetry out to people
Yes. And
sometime during this year's, doing some book launches and all that. So, he was a poet at heart. They always, people always like find excuses. Oh, he's an artist and that's why he behaves the way he do. But again, like my father, Chandu actually mentored a lot of people with poetry.
uh-huh.
A lot of people, you must have heard them at that event or seen some Facebook
Yes.
posts.
Yes,
But
yes.
a lot of, like, especially during pandemic and all, he got these, oh, Chandu, I decided to write poetry because I'm sitting at home and can you read it? And, he would read, he would critique. And, somebody said to me that, hey, for Chandu, he already was up there. So when he's reciting, he's not looking for any applause or he's not looking for any awards. But he said, but when a new poet is reciting and then Chandu does wah wah, for that person, it's an award that, wow, Chandu appreciated us. So he actually also got that kind of adulation, as I would put it, and so he was very much like my father. He didn't care about, like Puraskar, for example. A lot of these writers want their Puraskar, the royalty as they call it, because obviously they're writer, unka ghar usi pe chalta hai. But my father, people would tell him that, what, so-and-so is getting so much more than you, and you, like, magazine is selling because of you. But my father said, that's okay. It's like, that's what I want. I mean, money. And same thing with, even through Tarak Mehta, when he was there for the first 6-7 years, but he never cashed in on all those things. It was like people would go crazy with him around.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Chandu. You sometimes like you feel like Chandu. Like whatever, and so that is a great similarity, that they love to do their work. They knew they were up there, but they didn't, they just did what they did.
It was about the work.
Like they were not looking for any
awards or
awards, awards or whatever, so that is like, and I kind of, like I said, I got that from my father. Although I am more, financially, I think I'm much more sensible than the two of them.
Thank God, somebody has to be right.
But otherwise,
that's why we are called Ghar Ki Lakshmi, right?
Otherwise, it's just two fabulous people who, who were like kind of, Gujarati mein we call them Ajat Shatru. कि सभी प्यार ही करते हैं उनसे. You don't meet much people who probably are jealous, but they are not enemies.
Yeah, exactly.
They're probably jealous of their fame, but not enemies. So it's just like, that I am sort of really it's humbled. That I had these two people in my life who kind of made along. I mean, it was like really overwhelming to see that many people at Chandu's memorial, and you realize like, wow, I mean, half the people, for the love for me and a lot of love for Chandu, people had flown from all over the country, to be, and so it's kind of, like when after my father left, but see, my father had retired and all that. Chandu was still very much active in the community. So his going was more impactful. My father lived to be 80. So it was a good life for him,
Mangalam Shivam. I mean, I think God always likes the good people. So, I think.
But I don't understand what he's doing with so many good people.
When we will find out. I am sure God's ways are always interesting, so, but I mean, I think this is such a blessing that you have had to have the, the love of two very, very special. I mean, you were the most important people in their lives, and that's just amazing, Eshani, that I think Purva Janam mein you must have done something to have these.
Actually, it is just not being. I think even I have lived here almost 39 years. But mujhe bhi, I am actually very sort of warmed from the love of the community also. I think that, and I believe कि ये मेरे father के आशीर्वाद है that I turned out to be the way I am.
Yeah.
That, I also try and make as many. I mean, मेरे भी कोई बहुत कम ही लोग होंगे जो that I have like a falling out with. So
I think what I've seen with you is selfless service. I mean, you just do it and then you say.
And I think what I have inherited from my father.
I see that.
And have been blessed by Chandu. Like उसने भी कभी मैंने उससे बोला कि चंदू यार क्या फ्री भी कर रहा है. But he always supported me. कभी उसने question नहीं किया. And
बिल्कुल.
I don't think we've ever had the conversation कि देख यार मेरा तो मुझे thank you भी नहीं बोला. Yeah, there are people who get offended. Oh, I did so much work, I wasn't. But
बिल्कुल.
मुझे ये भी, I mean, I'm being very honest कि because I honestly believe, like my father, like Chandu, कि अच्छा काम करोगे तो लोगों को पता ही है कि ये तुम्हारा काम है. You
Bilkul,
know,
bilkul, bilkul. Vishani, I mean, today I wanted to focus the interview on the two very special people in your life, and but I know that we should do another interview on just your own work, which is pretty amazing as well. But today I thought let
नहीं
people
नहीं,
learn
absolutely, absolutely.
about the two, the
नहीं नहीं,
entrepreneur.
I'm just it's kind of
Yeah.
talking about
No, no,
me,
no.
just
My point
saying
is that I know that it's like all three of you are stars, and so that's what I'm saying, to manage that with such love, right? Like all of you did your things and lived a happy life, and that's something to really कई घर में होता है, you see one or the other, but in your house, there's a great father, you are nobly fathered and nobly husbanded, and
correct,
that
correct.
everybody had great love, and you yourself are special, and for putting everybody together in that way. I mean, I think that is your speciality too, in addition to all that other things you have done for the community. घर का इतना प्यार और इतना सब कुछ, and your kids are wonderful. So really, really, you guys are an inspiration to the community. So thank you, Ishani, for
Thank you, Ranjani.
taking the time, and thank
Yes.
you for sharing Chandu with all of us.
Thank
And
you
Tarak.
for letting me kind of, reminisce on their memories.
Yeah.
My father's been gone almost 7 years, and Chandu's been gone 5 months. But again, like I said, after my father went, I published a book
Yeah.
in his memory. And so a lot of people have that, tabletop book with so much written about my father. And people were like dying, saying, "Mujhe bhi likhna hai, mujhe bhi likhna hai." And so I'm also hoping that, I can keep Chandu's memories alive with all his work. So I'm actually looking forward for that book to be completed, where, of course it's in Gujarati. तो आप नहीं पढ़ पाओगे, but
बट एक आध मेरे लिए थोड़ा सा एक
हाँ,
आध
but
तो हिंदी में कर दीजिए, ताकि मैं भी थोड़ा सा थोड़ा सा
so Poppy is a good person, because I think Poppy
yeah, she knows how to
Gujarati
do.
भी,
Yeah,
yeah.
समझ गई.
So,
तो बट आई
but
थिंक ये मेमोरी वाली बात तो कोई भी चंदू जी या तारक मेहता को भूलने नहीं वाले. नॉट ओनली टुडे, वो क्या कहते हैं, यावत् स्यास्यन्ति गिरिन, फॉर टाइम इमेमोरियल. You are
yeah,
never, nobody is going to ever forget. But thank you for doing the books, and thank you for sharing them with us.
thank you, Ranjan.
Truly
Thank you.
appreciated, Ishani.
Me too.
Namaste.
Thank you so much.